Welcome to our session, our CPAC Summer School session on advocacy, leadership, and family support. So today we're going to really talk about the role of advocacy for CPACs. We know that CPACs are an advisory body, but they really advocate for systems change. They're not really there to advocate for an individual family unless that family highlights something that may be wrong with the system and that warrants some CPAC involvement and interest. I think we'll also talk about leadership opportunities and then family managing and creating family support systems, because that's another great role of the CPAC is to provide that support for families of kids with disabilities in your district. I've included this image of the PTA advocacy heroine. There's a great story about how a young person had stepped into advocacy due to the role of her mother, the role her mother played to advocate for her as she was growing up. So it's just inspiring to always hear how advocacy can help, change a person's life. And advocacy is really just a very simple concept. It's the act of speaking on or behalf of either a support of a cause or a person. So it's really raising awareness around an issue or a person so that can be addressed. So advocacy is a really positive, wonderful thing. Advocacy is also powerful. We have a strong history of parent advocacy here in the disability community. A lot of this was driven by families moving, systems forward to support those that they cared about. Our Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 has those reasonable accommodations throughout school and workplaces. In Massachusetts, families drove the creation of the first all-inclusive special education law, Chapter 766, in the country. And that law ultimately served as the model for the federal law, IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act. Families, especially our founder here at the Federation, Martha Ziegler, advocated for parent training and information centers to be funded by the federal government. And we have had the first and continuing PTI in the country at 51 years right now. And then the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act. We celebrate the signing of the law as pictured here by President Bush many, many years ago, 35 years ago, and how that really created a difference in our world, making this all of our communities much more inclusive. One thing we've seen in a change is the movement from that, mass, all families together, advocates and people coming together to advocate for larger systems change, now to individual advocacy. It's done at an IEP meeting for an individual child by a family. And unfortunately, the system is set up so that many families have to spend a lot of time or resources to find secure services for their child. Many parents, actually describe this whole process as a fight or a struggle, and they may experience battle fatigue. And we know that those with cultural and economic capital, if you have it, you can spend it, are better able to secure that appropriate education for their child. So there's disparity within the systems. And individual advocacy is not changing our system. And when families advocate for their own child, it might help that child, but it really doesn't change the system. And sometimes, families even have to sign non-disclosure agreements to, receive the services for their child as they negotiate with school systems. And so schools are really responding on a one-at-a-time basis. We're not seeing that systems advocacy. We know that children from low income or culturally and linguistic minority families may be disproportionately impacted by all of our systems. So here I'm advocating that CPACs can provide the opportunity to raise really good questions, to the decision makers. They can voice concerns and provide that direct input to influence the policy and program decisions. They're there to advise the school district, the school committee administration on matters that pertain to the health and safety and special education of students with disabilities. So what can parents do together? This is the call back to how do we advocate together for systems or policy changes? How do we really educate our whole community about the needs of people with disabilities? Really talking about, inclusion models across the whole community. Let's explore strategies that are sustainable, rather than just fixing the immediate issue. How do we make that good systems change? And I think one of the ways is that CPACs, but also families can start to share their stories, their experiences. That's what really has an impact. We can share data and statistics, but until you know how this affects an individual, a child, a family, and put that in words and bring that forward, I think that's what has lasting impression. So we're asking CPACs to, be that force of collective activism. But we know that collective action requires parent leaders. And that's why you're here at CPAC Summer School, because you're learning a little bit more about leadership and what it takes to be involved with a CPAC. There are so many topics that CPACs can provide input in decision-making and policy and in affecting their communities. So the accessibility and location of programs, after-school sports and clubs, transportation issues, education for multiple people who help our students, including bus aides. Bullying and school climate is a real great topic area for CPACs to come involved with. There might be district policies or procedures that might need that lens of disability. And, schools are talking about cell phone policies right now. And how does that work if a student is using a cell phone as an assistive technology device? Extended school year services, professional development for educators, reading programs. We know schools are in Massachusetts are all part of this new literacy launch, and how is that affecting our community? Even transition between schools, CPACs can help make sure that those are smooth transitions. And then the big picture, our districts, the school committee or whatever governing board might set an annual vision and goals for that year, and having the CPAC provide input in that thing to be that advisor to advocate, on certain levels on all of these issues. CPAC can be leaders within some of these groups that are identified here. These are advocacy options for all families within a school district. In your school community, not only can a family get involved with the CPAC, but they might get involved with the LPAC, the English Learner Parent Advisory Council. The district might have a task force or principals group that they can be involved with. Most families with kids with disabilities are a general ed family and a special ed family. So being involved in the PTA and PTO and helping them understand the role of the CPAC. School committee is a great and the primary place that CPAC should be advocating for, but they can also sit on school site councils which are run by the principals, and that's really an opportunity to have some local input into their child's school. There might be a specific advisory committee within the district on a topic, such as a wellness advisory committee. And then we also always suggest that the CPAC get involved in the hiring of maybe the special ed administrator or superintendent, because that really affects, a core component of all the families who are receiving special education services in the district. So those are, key hiring committees that we need the CPAC voice on. Within your local community or city or town, these are places where the CPAC might have an opportunity to help educate the public about disability issues, CPAC-related issues, and other issues. So if the town has a disability commission, you probably should be collaborating with them. You might have to speak in front of the select board, and they need to understand your role. Recreation department, board of health, any kind of town board that might have impact or interaction with families of kids with disabilities. Any local organization that has programs for kids, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, there might be others in your community. Your local education foundation, which is funding educational initiatives in your community. They're a great partner and a place to advocate for. And then there also are nonprofits that might be topic specific, especially if they're funding initiatives in your community or region. At the state level, there's lots of places for advocacy, and I'm so proud. I've seen so many CPAC leaders go on to sit on some of these advisory boards. So our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, fondly known as DESE, has Board of Education advisory councils. One is a special education council, and the federal government also requires that our state have a federal special education advisory panel. So these can be staffed by both educators, professionals, and families and parents, parent leaders. So it's a great place to weigh in on state policy and state procedures. There is also citizen advisory boards, and these are for the adult service agencies, and they're looking for that family voice as part of their decision-making bodies, and even advisory bodies. So one of the things that we need to look at as we start to develop our leadership skills and how you want to get involved in a CPAC. I love this website because it used to have 10 characteristics of a good leader. It's up to 12, folks. We need more characteristics. But look at some of them here around, collaboration and communication. That's what we've been talking about all through CPAC Summer School, is opening up channels of communication, having transparent two-way collaboration and communication, all that family engagement kind of best practices, but courage and resilience. It's not easy to do this work. So we need to just make sure that we're acting in a respectful way and that we have some vision, that we are in it for the long run. So look at some of these characteristics, see areas where you think you've kind of, okay, I'm good on this, but I need to build some skills here. I always think listening should be added to all of these lists. And so this is just a good place to kind of look at, and as you are choosing a leader of your CPAC, look for these qualities in any candidates. One of the ways that the Federation can help you is to provide training around leadership development. The CPAC Summer School is one example. MassPAC runs a new CPAC officer orientation for MassPAC members 4 times a year to kind of help you get ready to lead your CPAC. This is a growth area for everyone. You don't just naturally know what it's like to be a leader. I think you have to learn and grow. And we have a newer initiative at the Federation, the Barbara Popper Family Leadership Institute. We were taking applications through July 27th. It's really about, creating those next round of change makers in our systems. And for me, this is a celebration of Barbara Popper, who hired me at the Federation, was my mentor for many, many years. And look what she was able to do. I have this snapshot of how she was able to use a parent advisory committee in a hospital setting to really change the policy, to change systems, and did it in a very structured way, just use the system itself to self-reflect and change and move and grow. She was an amazing change maker. And I'm really glad that we're honoring her with this Family Institute. And if you don't apply for this year, you can apply in coming years. So the other issue that goes with all of this is the role of CPACs in not only advocating and building leaders, but providing that family support to really make sure that this is a part of your role. It's not a focus of the CPAC, let's say, under the law and your duties, but the support groups can help build your community. And by doing that, you're bringing more people to the table, you're hearing more of those different perspectives, and you get that input, the input that the CPAC needs to complete their advisory role. Those support groups are really that safe environment for families to not only connect, but to share experiences, to put a voice to their concerns. And then hopefully we in the CPAC can help them find the resources that they need to answer their questions. I think these support groups can help establish those friendships. They also provide practical advice. That's the parent-to-parent connection. And I think this will be that sustaining component of your CPAC to help keep it strong over years, is that parents feel comfortable coming together to share, to connect, and ultimately to provide that anecdotal experience of what's working in your system and what's not working in your system. So there's lots of resources out there as you start to figure out how to either rise into leadership or reflect upon leadership. I love the Serving on Groups curriculum. It's available online, free, in English and Spanish, very family friendly. The Leading by Convening curriculum kind of takes it up a notch and talks about a little bit more around some specific leadership styles and skills. But really the most fun resource here is this notes from the backpack and how this blog post or podcast is speaking up for every child. The guest, Rosilia Grillier, is just amazing. She's a great advocate and she speaks from the heart. And I think it's another one of those inspiring connections as you think about leadership and think about advocacy work, because she's just a parent, but what a fierce advocate, and has just changed systems. So thank you for attending. We have our last session next week around advising the district. And so I hope you continue to watch these videos and enjoy CPAC Summer School.